talk about the online safety bill. Don't go away. This is very important. Now, I know it's sort of boring to have to go through these nuts and bolts type of legal proceedings, but and again, we have the feeling generally that we can't do anything about it, but we can. We can talk to people about it. We can make other people aware of the problem, and that way, in little tiny increments, we can actually move things. If anything could convince you of the importance of standing against this particular idea of a bill, then I refer you to the video I made yesterday about an older man being arrested by the police for passing on a meme. Now, the meme was a sort of a mashup of the LGB, I've forgotten how many letters there are now, but it does have a couple of pluses at the end, I think, flag, which has, when you put four of them together, the centre bit makes a symbol, which, as I said in my last video, was quite common in on the European continent in the 30s and the 40s of the 20th century. Okay, so even if you can't get any sense out of your MP or you don't want to bother with that, there's the Bad Law Project, which is being run by Harry Miller, the man who also passed on something on Facebook and got a visit from the police. Only he happened to be an ex-copper himself, so he knew how to fight against this and throws his weight behind people who find themselves in this sort of Kafkaesque situation that man did. So we have a situation here which we really have to be aware of, not only for ourselves, but for our children, because they're going to be affected by that too. As a matter of fact, more children will be than adults, because children tend to, for instance, post things on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, more like TikTok. They tend to post these things without considering too carefully the implications. So I'll just tell you what's wrong with the online safety bill and why it's wrong. Okay, so it was a draft bill which was first introduced in May 2021. It's in the process of being kicked backwards and forwards by the Houses of Parliament now. But the government seems quite determined to pass it, and it's a bit difficult to work out why they can't see what the problem is. So the whole point is that what they're saying is that social media companies are going to be responsible for what anybody posts. So if, for instance, you post what looks like an unpleasant flag on Facebook or something, Facebook becomes liable for that. And so what they're going to do, they're going to set their automatic system to the highest level, and you're not going to get anything past them. I'll give you an example of a situation of how the automatic system can't really discriminate. A few years ago now, I had a Rottweiler dog, and she was the sweetest, gentlest dog you could ever hope to have. My kids would stick their fingers in her ears, and she was just a lovely, patient dog. And I'll tell you how patient she was. We lived in a Victorian house, with we slept in the attic, and the dog slept in the kitchen, and because there are about five flights of steps, and she was already getting on a bit. She found all those steps difficult to negotiate, so I had a bed set up for her in the kitchen, which was in the basement. Sometime when my husband was away, I was alone in the house. I was sleeping upstairs. in the attic, came down in the morning. I discovered that the house had been broken into during the night. They'd come in through the basement, and they'd come in with the intention of stealing, and they stole the Rottweiler. We did actually get her back in the end. It was quite a heartbreaking situation for a while, but that's the point. When I was looking for her, I tried to post on Facebook, stolen Rottweiler bitch. They wouldn't let it. I realised the post wouldn't post. I had to put it as a female Rottweiler. Then it posted, no trouble at all. But you see, there was no discrimination there in the use of language. I was using technically proper language, and the algorithm just couldn't handle it. Okay, so many people like me can get reasonable content removed. The funny thing is, though, you get unreasonable content that's still up there because somehow the words don't trigger the algorithm. You can request a review from a human reviewer, but I have an idea that many of the human reviewers are, well, they're very badly paid. They're low-paid individuals, and my feeling is that they're mostly in countries east of 36 degrees longitude, because whereas social media posts criticising Christianity go through without problems, I've heard of many cases where media posts criticising Islam are having a lot more difficulty. So anyway, that's the problem with the social media companies. They don't have the sophistication yet to actually really look at what's being said. The online safety bill then has two types of lack of safety. It's got illegal content. Okay. There are a few problems with that, but we can all understand mostly illegal content. And then there's the second, legal, but which has the potential to cause harm. By that metric, baking cakes could be banned, you know. I mean, it's terribly dangerous. You could burn yourself on the oven, you could catch your fingers in the mixer, and you could wreck your health with all the sugar. So you think that's going too far? Well, you tell me where any law that's been passed hasn't gone too far or been carried to ridiculous degrees by people who have got the bit between the teeth. And if the interpretation is subjective, which is what much of these laws have actually specified, that it's a subjective law, then that provides a skateboard for the police to hop onto and have themselves a ball. Now, so let's look at what's the notes here? Illegal content. Well, what's illegal content? Okay, there's stuff like images of child abuse or death threats, you know, reasonable. But what about hate speech? You see, the Labour Party put in a law which, is now 20 years old, which was hate speech law, Racial and Religious Hatred Act or something. So there is already enshrined in law something called hate speech. And what's hate speech? Well, anything you want it to be. If you said to me something that was perfectly reasonable, but I considered it hatred towards me, I could take that to the police. Now, the fact is that if you called me a silly old woman and I took that to the police, they'd laugh at me and say, silly old woman. But if I were a Muslim and you said silly old Muslim, they'd arrest you straight away because that's hate speech. This can be a bit of a problem. It's all subjective. If I took it as hate speech, it's the way they've got it now is if it's illegal if it causes harm to society. Well, I mean, just look at what's happening in Russia now, criticising what's going on in Ukraine, irrespective of whether you agree with what's going on or not. But if you are in Russia and you criticise it, that's causing harm to society. You get arrested. Okay, and it's the sort of thing that Count Dacula got caught on. The police said that his Nazi pug joke was causing harm to society or harm and distress, and they had to really look, but they finally found some compliant rabbi to say, oh yeah, it causes distress. Thousands said it didn't, but that they found one who was prepared to go along with them, and they used the term grossly offensive, which is again a legal definition in the hate speech law, and it wasn't. But even if it were, grossly offensive should not be against the law. Threats should be against the law. Grossly offensive, well, you can be grossly offensive about almost anything. And now they're actually pulling out the words causing anxiety as well as a need to shut someone down. In that video which I was talking about, the one posted by Lawrence Fox, in which this guy posted these 4 LGBTQ plus flags in a configuration that, as I said, was reminiscent of a symbol used by some very nasty people. The arresting policeman said they were arresting him because he had caused anxiety. That was what the policeman said. It's right there on the video. Well, I want to tell you, whenever I'm driving along the road and I see the traffic lights turned amber, that causes me anxiety as well. Anyway, the online harm bill insists that social media companies are responsible for all of this. So if the law steps in, they could find themselves being prosecuted for, say, for instance, for what that man did. Well, I don't suppose you need to be terribly imaginative to work out how the social media companies are going to react to something like that. We'll end up with an internet full of kittens and people agreeing with each other about the weather not being very nice today. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then the second thing is legal but harmful. There's no existing legal definition for that. So the online safety bill has made its own. Here, this is in the content is harmful if it has a significant adverse physical or psychological impact on the adult or the child. Right, so, you know, if it has a psychological impact on you, then it's harmful and, you know, that becomes prosecutable. But prosecutable to the social media company. I don't know whether instead of or as well of the actual person who did the posting. And then the second thing is it allows the Secretary of State to simply designate content as harmful through secondary legislation. So if somebody actually puts something there and then later, and then there are people complaining, the Secretary of State can step in and say, that's harmful, and it becomes harmful, which means that if Nadine Dorries or a successor goes mad and decides to take over the world, she could say that it was harmful to give an opposing political opinion. After all, it would lead to confusion, wouldn't it? And worry and decisions and that sort of thing. Well, what'll be the outcome of all of this? Obviously, stifling of expression by the media companies, because they're going to be held responsible. And on this occasion, not out of political bias, and God knows there's enough of that. No, but out of self-defence. On top of that, the government wants to add another law to the Communications Act of 1988, the Malicious Communications Act, I think it's called. And it's something about causing, what does it say here? Causing psychological harm amounting to at least serious distress. Well, yeah, that's for online bullying, and it is a problem. But I understand why they're doing it, but it's sloppy and it's downright dangerous. Frankly, I'd vote Labour next time, except I know there'd be worse. And that's our little problem. So the only thing we can do is keep supporting organisations, for instance, like the Bad Law Association or whatever it's called. But there are others as well, whichever one of your choice. But you have to stand up against this because it's dangerous. Yes, there are people who are going to get mashed by bad posts. That's true, and it's heartbreaking and it's awful when it destroys somebody's life, but it's a lot worse to destroy a society, I'm afraid. So we have to be very careful about this. All right, well, that's my rundown of the online harm bill. I'm Granniopteryx. Oh, please like and share this video. Please support my channel if you can. And if you are subscribed, especially on YouTube, check the subscription, because sometimes it drops. I've seen that happening, and I've been told about it happening. Also, subscribe to one of my social media platforms. I am at granniopteryx on Twitter, Gab and Parler. And because I always let you know when I've uploaded a video on one of those. So even if you're a particular, YouTube, BitChute, Minds or Rumble, if they don't tell you, you'll get to know directly from me. All right, that's it. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm, or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com, and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.